Hey there, educators, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we are absolutely transforming the way you teach. We're going to move entirely away from those vague, ambiguous lesson plans that kind of leave both you and your students guessing, and instead, we're creating a highly practical guide for designing lesson plans using action verbs. And we're going to build this whole thing around the legendary learning journey known as Bloom's Taxonomy. It's going to be a real game changer. But first, I want to kick things off by asking you a pretty direct question. How do you actually measure real learning? Think about your current lesson plans for a second. Do you ever use phrases like, students will read this text, or students will understand the impact? The major challenge here is that instructions like understand or know are completely invisible. They happen entirely inside a student's head, which means there's literally no way to measure them. You can't observe knowing. But as you'll see, you absolutely can observe building, contrasting, or defending. So to get us to that highly measurable state, here is our roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll look at the learning map. Then, the lemon metaphor. Third, the power of verbs. Fourth, a practical design guide. And finally, alignment and assessment. Let's jump in. Starting right off with Section 1, the learning map. We are moving from passive memory to actionable thinking. The foundational framework we're exploring today is Bloom's Taxonomy, first created back in 1946 by American psychologist Benjamin Bloom and then revised in 2001. It's essentially a hierarchical framework of the cognitive domain. Now, don't let the academic sound of that put you off. This isn't just dry psychology. It is the modern educator's absolute ultimate roadmap. It operates on the idea that learning has to be structured sequentially, going from the simplest cognitive tasks to the most complex. It's the total backbone for teaching measurable skills. Now, why should you use it? Well, there are three massive reasons to integrate this map into your classroom. Number one, it helps you establish absolutely clear objectives, so you know exactly the depth of understanding you're looking for. Number two, it allows you to frame super precise instructions, totally eliminating that ambiguity we talked about earlier. And number three, it helps you structure fair assessments. The whole goal here is intentional design. You literally never want to blindly test a complex skill that you haven't actually taught. Okay, so what does this map actually look like? Well, here are the 6 sequential steps. 1. Remember. 2. Understand. 3. Apply. 4. Analyze. 5. Evaluate. And 6. Create. The absolutely crucial thing to remember here is the hierarchical rule. Think of it like a giant pyramid. You can't analyze a concept if you don't first understand it, right? And you definitely can't understand it if you can't even remember the basic facts. Each tier is built directly on the one right below it. All right, moving to Section 2, the lemon metaphor. This is going to make those 6 levels instantly intuitive. Let's start at the very bottom of the pyramid. Imagine a lemon. At level 1, remember, we're just talking rote memorization. We learned that a lemon is yellow, it's kind of oval-shaped, and it tastes really sour. On their own, these are basically meaningless facts. But then we step up to level 2, understand. Now we start to decode this info. We understand it's yellow because it's ripe, we know it loves sunshine, and most importantly, we decode that it contains vitamin C, an antioxidant that keeps us healthy. We don't just remember it now, we actually comprehend the lemon. So let's bump it up to levels 3 and 4. Now that we understand those health benefits, we hit level 3, apply. We can actually use this knowledge in the real world. So say your sister is sick, you boil the lemon in hot water, throw in some honey, and serve her this hot tea to help her feel better. You've applied the knowledge. Then, at level 4, we analyze. We break the lemon down like a puzzle. We examine the juicy flesh, but we also look at the skin. And we figure out, hey, the inside is great, but the skin is super bitter and might even have traces of pesticides, so we probably shouldn't eat it. We are critically breaking down the information. And finally, we reach the absolute peak of cognition with levels 5 and 6. At level 5, evaluate, we critically judge our lemon. We stack it up against an orange, we're talking vitamin levels, cost, taste, even packaging waste, judging without bias to see which fruit is actually better. And then, the ultimate step, level 6, create. Because we have remembered, understood, applied, analyzed, and evaluated this lemon, we can reorganize everything into something totally new. We design a brand new lemonade business, complete with a super cute shop and a catchy slogan like natural, healthy, yummy. We literally traveled from just staring at a yellow fruit to full-blown creative application. Which brings us to Section 3, the power of verbs. This is the secret to ascending that pyramid. Take a look at this matrix. This right here is your core toolkit. Notice how just replacing passive, boring words with active, punchy verbs completely changes the game? If you want a basic level 1 outcome, you use verbs like define or identify, like identify the main characters. But if you want to push them to a level 4 outcome, you use contrast or debate, asking them to compare the motivations of two characters. And if you want them at the very top, level 6, you command them to design or write. The verb literally dictates the cognitive depth. You are engineering how your students think simply through the verb you choose. All right, section 4, the practical design guide. We're translating all this theory into a quick 3-step masterclass. So here is how you actually put this all into motion. Step 1, define the target. Honestly, before you write a single word of your lesson plan, you have to ask yourself, how deep do we need to go here? If it's basic terminology, just aim for levels 1 and 2. But if it's real-world problem solving, you gotta aim for 5 and 6. Step 2, craft your objectives using those action verbs we just talked about. And step 3, and please don't skip this one, align the classroom activity and the final assessment directly with whatever verb you chose. Let's actually look at step 2 in action, because this is a huge aha moment. On the left, we have your typical, completely unmeasurable objective. Students will know the impact of industrialization. Well, how do you grade knowing? You literally can't. Now look at the right side. We've upgraded this using a level 4 action verb. Contrast the economic and social impacts of industrialization on rural versus urban communities. Boom! Instantly, the goal is crystal clear, the depth is locked in at analysis, and you know exactly what your students need to be doing. And that leads us perfectly into section 5, alignment and assessment, closing the learning loop fairly. Because here's the thing, setting a grade objective, that is really only half the battle. If you challenge your students with an objective to contrast the impacts of industrialization, which is level 4 analysis, your classroom activity absolutely has to be something like a comparative matrix or a debate. You're actively guiding them through analysis, which means when exam day finally rolls around, you cannot unfairly assess them with a basic level 1 multiple choice vocabulary quiz. No way. If you taught at a contrast level, you must test at a contrast level. Anything less is honestly a failure of instructional design. To wrap this explainer up, there is a fantastic quote from our source material that just beautifully grounds everything we've talked about. Bloom's taxonomy shifts the focus away from passive memorization and provides a clearer, actionable map to guide learners toward deeper, critical, and more creative thinking. By simply swapping vague ideas for precise action verbs, you are totally transforming the educational experience. So I want to leave you with a final provocative thought. If you were to pull up your lesson plans right now, today, and audit the verbs you're using, what level of thinking are you truly demanding from your students? Are you just asking them to memorize the lemon, or are you inspiring them to go out and build the lemonade stand?